Yo, good morning. Good morning. How you doing? Welcome to the show. Welcome to Deconstructing Christianity. I'm your host, Coach Renz, and today we're going to talk about the flood story. I'm going to talk about the flood story. If you're new and if you want to get right to the beginning of the conversation, then you might want to skip to about the 5-minute mark. I'm considering doing a reading of the Epic of Gilgamesh in order for people to truly comprehend and this information, because uh, oftentimes people just tell you the cliff notes, tells you the parts of the story that are connected to the Noah's version. Noah's version of the story, but I will probably go through the entire aspect of it from the Epic of Gilgamesh. Uh, it may be better to do the Atrahasis, but we're going to do the Epic of Gilgamesh since it is most likely the rendering that was utilized in order to create a Judean version of the flood story. What's up, Florida Geechee? How you doing? Welcome to the show. We're on TikTok here, Facebook, and YouTube over there. As another reminder, next week, October 31st, we will be meeting here in San Antonio. That meetup will occur October 31st through November 2nd here in San Antonio. If you go to my YouTube page and click on this video or any other previous lives, you will be able to see the hotel that we're staying in. You can't use the link anymore, but you can call the number. You call the number and you still will be able to reserve your hotel with the Free Thinkers group. You'll get a free breakfast, you'll get a free supper, and we are having events mostly at the hotel at Devil's River Distillery, which is a few blocks, like a 7-minute walk. The only place that we're traveling to, that you're expected to travel to, is the Japanese Tea Garden on Saturday, but everything else will be in and around the hotel and other areas of the city around the hotel, and it is downtown. So there'll be plenty of entertainment and things going on as well that we can participate in. So let me get a cigar, and then we'll get the show actually started. It's going to be a minute before I allow guests to come on the show, so just be patient. So initially, we going to class. We going to class. We're doing this like you're sitting in a lecture at your favorite University of Deconstruct. Oh, I should change the name of the channel. The University of Deconstructing Christianity. That just hit me. Just hit me. Brilliant. Brilliant, I say. Brilliant. Now, before we get started, we must do a bit of background, and that bit of background will allow for more people to get on here, so that when they catch us in the middle of the reading, it won't be as many people who catch us in the middle of the reading, although it's going to happen anyway. Today's show is going to be shorter than normal. I am going to end at 1:30 my time here in San Antonio. It's 11:15 in San Antonio, so that gives us about 2 hours and 15 minutes for the show, right? So we are going to go over this story. I'm sure that there are plenty of conspiracy theories out there, plenty of additional informations and thought processes, but what we are basing this on is the people who were in that region. So when we look at the Babylonian flood myth, there are 3 primary flood myth stories that were very well known in the Mesopotamian area before the biblical version of the flood story was ever created or adapted for a Judean version of that story. We have the Sumerian flood story, we have the story of Atrahasis, and then we have the Floric story of Utnapishtim, which is found in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Now, the Sumerian story dates back to around 2200 to 1800 BCE and is one of the, if not the oldest flood myth stories that we currently have any evidence of the writing itself. Although it dates in around that time, closer to the 1800, 1600 time frame, it goes back. The story was being told much earlier, thousands of years, a couple thousand years earlier than that. The story, the hero of that story is Zuasutra, who is a king in the during the Sumerian time frame. And from that story, we later get the Atrahasis story. Atrahasis, who was considered a devout worshiper of Enlil, was told in a dream when he slept in Enlil's of Enki, and when he slept in Enki's temple, he was given a dream. In one version of the story, in another version of the Atrahasis, he was spoken to through the reeds as to as to the coming of the flood. In the Gilgamesh story, the flood is a small portion of the story in tablet 11 of the Epic of Gilgamesh. And this is when Gilgamesh was seeking out immortality. And in seeking that immortality, he was told of Utnapishtim, who had achieved immortality, sought him out, and Utnapishtim is now revealing to him the story of how he became immortal, which is going to be the flood story that is in tablet 11 of the Epic of Gilgamesh. Now, tablet 11 dates to around the 700s BCE, which is about 700s BCE, which is the 8th century BCE. This story is being told then. This story, the evidence of it that we have, the most complete version, is what we have at that time frame. But we know the story was at least written somewhere around between the 1600s and 1200s because we found other fragments of the story. So the 700 BCE tablet is just the most complete, but fragments of it have been found that date back to around 1200 and 1600 BCE. So this story was well known prior to our first mentioning of Israelites, which is first mentioning of Israelites in history occurs with the Meneptah stele in 1204. So we know it's a very well-known story. It was a story that was known in Babylon and Assyria during the time frame of the Assyrian exile for the Judean people. But it is during the Babylonian time frame that this story most likely came into its final rendering for the Bible. So although there may have been people in the Assyrian captivity, the Judeans in Assyrian captivity who knew about the story, because the Genesis book was most likely initially written by two sources. It's the J source and the P source. So you have the priestly and you have the J source, which is the Yahwist. We can tell that Genesis incorporates two different versions of a Genesis story based on those two different groups. This time frame of writing and editing starts most likely in around 700 BCE and goes all the way down to around the end of the Babylonian exile, which will put it around 500 BCE, maybe even 400 BCE. We don't have any evidence. There's nothing that suggests that the Judean people knew cuneiform, the Assyrian cuneiform, and were able to adapt some of the story from them. Although we do know, according to the book of Daniel, that he says that there were, and Daniel was written around 200 to 100 BCE, finalized at least. And we know that Daniel, in that book, which is set during the Babylonian exile, says that many of the scholarly Judeans learned how to speak Babylonian, learned how to read Babylonian. So in that time frame, it is quite possible, most likely, that they would have understood this story, understood this motif. Now, many people will use the term plagiarism. Plagiarism is more of a modern term, because it denotes ownership. It would be like, I was explaining to my wife last night how Marvel has Hercules, DC also has Hercules. because those are in the public domain. No one has ownership over either one of those characters. So in ancient times, no one had ownership of a flood narrative. So it's not necessarily plagiarism, but it is the usage of a common motif, but then re-engineered to fit the people who they are telling the story to, right? So you will not get me to I will not use the term plagiarism, but it is a common motif of a flood story that may go as far, that most likely goes back to the Younger Dryas flooding, which the Younger Dryas flooding only rose to sea levels about 400 feet. So that in itself would have been a catastrophic thing, because just like today, the overwhelming majority of the population on the planet lives within 400, lives closer to the shoreline. So you can imagine any type of flooding, even if it happened today, a 400 feet increase in sea levels, the entire state of Florida is now underwater. Okay. So with these popular motifs, we have the story. Now, and this part of it, because I've never done this before, but I'm going to do this time. You can type and write as much as you like. I'm not going to be paying attention to it right now, because we are going to go through tablet 11 of the Epic of Gilgamesh, and Gilgamesh being a king, but also being this mighty warrior, this person who is half demigod. He is part Anunnaki, part human, and just as the normal, a popular motif of gods having sex with women, we have this. Now, if you wanted to go deeper into other motifs of Genesis and how they are similar to what you find in your Bible, then I would suggest you read the Atrahasis, because the Atrahasis actually starts more with a creation of man by Nintu, utilizing the blood of one of the Anunnaki and some clay. So if you want to go start earlier in the story, then it would be the Atrahasis would be the one that you would want to go to for that information. So as we go through this, you're going to hear the similarities, and then we're going to talk about those similarities, and then we'll talk about how the flood, just a worldwide flood, never happened, point blank, period. So this is going to probably take about 15-20 minutes to go through this part of it. But if you've never, like I said, most people have only heard portions of this story broken down so that you only get the main parts. But today, I'm going to do it a little different. Right? We're going to go through and read the whole damn thing of the Epic of Gilgamesh, Tablet 11, which contains the flood story of the Babylonians, which we've already established. The Judaic people, the Jewish people, would have had access to this story and then just made it into their own variation of it. So let's get started with this narrative of the Epic of Gilgamesh, Tablet 11. So Gilgamesh spoke and said to the old man then, "When I looked at you, I thought that you were not a man, one made like me. I had resolved to challenge you as one might challenge a demon, a stranger adversary. But now I see that you are Utnapishtim, made like me, a man, the one I sought, the one whom I might find out how death can be avoided. Tell me then, Father, how it came about that you were admitted into the company of the gods, who granted you eternal life." The father Utnapishtim spoke and said, "I will tell you, Gilgamesh, the king, the story. A secret of the gods I will disclose. There was an ancient city, Surupat. You know of it, most fortunate of cities. God favored on the banks of the Euphrates. The gods in heaven decided in their council to bring the flood down on the fortunate city. They sat in secret council together, deciding. Anu was there, the counselor Enlil, Ninurta of the silence, and there also was the god Inuji, monitor of the canals, and there was Ea, cleverest of the gods. Now, Ea can be supplemented in the earlier Babylonian story. Ea is Enlil, is Enki. So keep that in mind that Ea is Enki. The voice of Enki telling me the secret came whispering through the reed walls of my house. You read walls, you read house walls, listen and hear me whisper. Listen and be attentive to what I tell you. Utnapishtim, son of Ubaratutu. Abandon your house, abandon what you possess. Abandon your house and build a boat instead. Seek life instead of riches. Save yourself. Take with you on the boat you build an instance of each thing living, so that they may be safe from obliteration in the flood. Perform the construction of the boat with care. Let the length of the boat and the width of the boat be equal. Roof over the boat as an abyss is roofed. The whispering voice spoke through the rustling walls. You read house walls. Listen and hear what I say. I listened and heard and spoke to the whispering voice. I hear what you say. What will you tell the others? What will I tell the old men and the people? Ea the God whispered to me, his servant. Tell them you can no longer live in the city, because you are out of favor with Enlil. The city is the city of Enlil, and therefore Utnapishtim, whom he hates, must find another domicile and another God who will be his person and protector. And you have therefore decided to depart from Shuruppak and seek another home. Tell them Ea, the God who will be your patron, whose domicile is Apsu, the abyss. Under the roof of Apsu is where you will go. As for the city, fortunate Shuruppak, in the morning drawing, abundance will then rain down, and there will be plenty of food. There will be plenty, a flood of bounty, the city teeming with heaven's profusions, game birds falling, fish unheard of before in song or story. Trembling loaves of fresh baked morning bread, grain will shower in from all the grain fields, a harvest of everything, yes, more than enough. There are things to tell the elders and people. In the first hour of the early morning drawing, all the people came out of the boat building and looked at the little children, the weak as well as the strong, everyone carrying something, asphalt and oil and pitch and best of timber, which to build. Day after day, I labored building the boat. 10 times a dozen cubits were the walls. 10 times a dozen cubits was each deck. There were 6 decks. The cabin was divided into 9 compartments. I made up the plans. I drew a picture of them for our guidance. I hammered the boat together and plugged the holes. The water plugs to keep the water out. I made the bitumen pitch in the pitch kiln. 3 sars of bitumen pitch of chalk and hull, and to be certain, 3 sars of chalk the inside. I counted punting holes and put them aboard. I had the basket bearer stow the supplies of oil and foodstuff, everything I needed. As for the people who came to help in the work, each day was like a New Year's holiday. I slaughtered sheep and bullocks for their feastings. For drinking, there was wine and beer plenty, as if there was a river overflowing. On the 7th day, I finished building the boat. I opened a bowl of ointment for my hands. I commanded the loading of everything I owned that could be carried, silver, gold, and all. The instances of living things to be saved from obliteration in the flood, and all my household people I took with me. At sunset that day, I launched the boat. The launching was very hard to manage. It took much shifting and much maneuvering on the way. To get the unwieldy boat down into the river and two-thirds of the water of under the water of its weight under the water in order to prevent it from capsizing. As darkness was coming on, I heard the God. Abundance will rain down, more than enough. Get yourself inside and close the latch. I saw the signs of the morning in the sky. Abundance will rain down more than enough. I got myself inside and closed the hatch. To Maria, the chalker, who's outside, chalked up the hatch with pitch. I gave my house. In the early hours of the next morning, dawning, there was a noise of a God in the clouds that rose and filled the morning sky with blackness. Shulat, the herald of the dread of Adad, moved out over the mountains and over the valleys, bellowing. Hanish, the herald of the the herald of dread, Adad, moved over the plains and over the cities. Everything turned into darkness as to night. From time to time, the Anunnaki blazed terrible lights. The rain came down in floods. Beneath the god of the underworld, Nagral, broke down his own doorsteps and opened the earth. Ninurta, god of chaos and of war, opened the dikes, and other floods burst forth. The south wind rushed and flooded over the mountains. Brother could not see brother in the welter. None of the gods in heaven could see the earth. The land was shattered like a shattered pot. Confusion of the dead Adad were everywhere, terrified. Gods got themselves up as high as they could go, nearest the highest heaven, cringing against the walls like beaten dogs. Ishtar cried out like a woman in her birth pains. The sweet-voiced lady cried out, the days that were having now become a featureless as clay, because what I said when I went to the gods in heaven, bringing calamity down on those whom now the sea engulfs and overwhelms, my children, who are now the children of fish. The Anunnaki sat and wept with her. The cowering gods wept, covering their mouths. 6 days and nights the storm went on this way. The south wind flooded over the mountains, valleys, until the 7th day when the storm birthed labor. Subsiding at last, the flood subsided at last. I opened the hatch and daylight touched my face. I looked outside. Nothing was moving at all. It looked as flat clay roofs look flat. And all the human beings that had turned to clay. I fell to my knees and wept. The tears ran down the side of my nose. I wept in total silence. I looked outside and looked as far as I could, trying to find, looking across the world, something. And then far off, something was there. What I looked like signs of an island could faintly be seen. And then the boat was caught and held from under. By the peak rock of a mountain under the water, it was Mount Nasir. The boat was grounded on. The first day it held, the second day and third day, the boat was held from under. And a fourth day, and a fifth day, a sixth day, and then a seventh day, I freed a dove. The dove flew free and flew away from the boat, seeking a place for its little feet to alight, and finding none, flew back to the boat to perch. I freed a swallow, then, and it flew free. It flew away from the boat, seeking a place for its little feet to alight, and finding none, flew back to the boat to find a place to alight. I freed a raven, then, and it flew free. It flew away from the boat and never returned. I had found a place to alight, circled about the place, and alighted, and settled itself and ate, and never after that returned to the boat. Then I set free all the other birds in the boat, and they flew free, scattering to the winds. I went ashore and offered a sacrifice. I poured out libations. I set out 7 vessels of offerings on a stand, and then set 7 more. I made a fire of wood, of myrtle, wood of cane, wood of cedar. I lit the fire. The odor touched the nostrils of the Agigi gods and gave them pleasure. I slaughtered a sheep to make a sacrifice. The gods collected like flies about the altar. The great goddess Pongentrix, Ishtar, came down from heaven wearing her neck and pendant Anu gave her for her adornment. Of lapis ordinarily made, she said, just as this pendant never shall forgotten by all the goddesses, so the goddess never all forget calamitous days. The gods may come to the ritual, but forbidden is the presence of Enlil, by whose command the flood was prematurely brought down on the heads of all my children, engulfing them. When the god Enlil came to the sacrifice, he saw the boat, and the sight filled him with rage. He spoke in anger to gather the gods. How is it that one man has saved himself? No breath of life was meant to be kept safe from its obliteration in the flood. Ninurta opened his mouth and said to the god, Ea, the cleverest of the gods, deviser, let Ea speak and give Enlil his answer. Then Ea opened his mouth and said to the gods, the punishment should always fit the crime. Let him who has performed an evil act be punished for that act. Let not the flood be brought down on the heads of all for what one man has done. And he who has transgressed show pity to him, lest he be cut off from all his fellows. Better that a lion should come to a village and prey upon it, taking a few, than that of a flood drowning all. Better a wolf shall find its raving away into the fields, devouring some. Much better than that the flood turn all that breathe into clay. Better that famine starve a few of them, than that of a harvest of water obliterating all. Better that Era, a plague god, better that he take hold of some, seize them, and bear them away to the underworld, than that the flood drown all. I did not tell the secret to the man. He listened to the wind and guessed the secret. Let the God sitting in council now decide how to reward this wise man for his wisdom. The god Enlil then the god Enlil went on board the boat. He took me by the hand and made me kneel. He took my wife by the hand and made her kneel. The god then touched our foreheads, blessing us, and said, you are but human, but now you are admitted into the company of the gods. Your dwelling place shall be the faraway, the palace, which is the source of the overflowing of all the rivers of the world there are. And so they led us to Faraway, the place we dwell in now, which is the source of all the rivers flowing through the world. Then scornfully, Utnapishtim said to the king, tell me, who would bring all the gods together so that for you they might in council decide what your deserving is, that you be granted admittance into the company of the gods? Let there be now a test, Gilgamesh. Let him but keep himself awake for a week, 6 nights and 7 days, to show your worth. So Gilgamesh sat down and began to test. Right. So that's just him and Gilgamesh talking. But that's the Epic of Gilgamesh version of the Noah's flood, which was the most popularized version during the time frame that they were in captivity. I'm sure through that reading, you probably picked up on a bunch of different themes that you see in the Bible. Not only just from the flood, the fact that Enlil or Enki, which is now known as Ea in this story, was talking about how you should not punish everyone for the transgression of a few, sounds eerily like no longer will the sons be, uh, no longer will the sins of the father be passed down to the son, nor the sins of the son passed to the father, that each man must answer to their own call, answer to their own sins instead of flooding them. But we want to stay within the story of within the flood story to gain an understanding of how this story was then transmuted into the Jewish version of a great flood of the Noah story. Now, like I said before, the Atrahasis is a much longer, much more detailed version that starts out from the creation of man. But in both cases, you have the issue in the Babylonian narrative. The issue was the fact that man had become too great and man had become too loud. Uh, and you're going to find more of this detail in the Atrahasis. And in that story, because of their loudness, first Enlil tries to kill man with a drought, and then later he tries to kill man with a famine. Neither one of them work. Man is still too loud. And so then Enlil decides to do this flood. Now, in both stories, there is a reason for man to die. In the Noah version, there's the idea of man had become wicked. You see, the Jewish people were having an issue in their version of their God at that time frame around 200 BCE. God was one being. In the Babylonian version, there are many gods. And so some gods can be evil or capricious. But in this instance, the God of the Bible has to be one. So he has to be the judge, he has to be the prosecutor, and he also has to be the good judge. So the blame had to then be shifted from Enlil killing them out of his own stupidity of, I just want everybody to shut them up so I can get some sleep, to man was evil, so man must now take the blame. But in all the cases of this story, God decides to kill man, but then someone is chosen for one reason. The God is also the one who saves people. Ea, or Enki, is the one in the Sumerian version, the Atrahasis, as well as the Babylonian version, who decides that he's going to help man out. But in the Bible, it has to only be the same God that is causing the problem. In each story, each hero, whether it's Zuasudra, Atrahasis, or Utnapishtim, they all build a boat. They all save a certain number of people, but Atrahasis, he saved way more people. The Babylonian version, they save more people. They all let birds fly away. They all let the bird, once a bird doesn't come back, that's when they know it's time to get off the boat. In the Sumerian story, it's a crane and some doves. In the Atrahasis and the Babylonian version, it's a raven and it's ravens and doves. In the Bible, it's ravens and doves. And so they all let those go out. They all take in animals. Now there is a difference in the fact that the biblical versions, which is something that is called out by many people, but is easily explained, is the fact that we have two different renderings of this story based on the Yahwist and the priestly clan. The Yahwist version is indicating that two pairs of every animal was brought onto the boat. The priestly clan determines that it's going to be two of every unclean animal and 7 pairs, two pairs of every unclean animal and 7 pairs of every clean animal is going to be brought onto the boat. So within the Bible, there is that difference, and that difference is there because you got two different groups who are writing this story. Now, the Bible is supposed to be the inerrant word of this God, so it shouldn't have any errancy. It should all read the same, but it just simply does not. But the idea of saving the animals also is a part of this motif that has traveled through time. They all have a window type scene. In the Zuasudra version, no window was built. In the Atrahasis and Utnapishtim, windows were built, but they were closed, and then at the end of the flood, the sunlight rose. In the Sumerian and Babylonian versions, it's a 7-day flood. In the biblical version, it turns to a 40-day flood. as we read in this version, the not only does the rain comes down, but it talks about how the gods of the rivers and gods of the canals and the god of the underworld also release their waters so that the flood can then happen. So the motif of waters coming from below that you see in the Noah story is present in the previous Babylonian story as well. So the waters are, so that is how the flood happens. There is a difference in there, and I thought this difference was interesting. How in the Utnapishtim story that we just read, while they were building the boat, they were celebrating, they were eating, and they were drinking. The Jewish version of the story, the Judah version of the story, changes the eating and the drinking to be what people who weren't getting on the boat was doing, where this is what people who were getting on the boat in the Utnapishtim story was going to do, because he was saving civilization, not just his family, whereas the Noah story, he's just saving his family. Right? So when that aspect of the Bible is repeated, it changes the narrative of the eating and the drinking and being merry, in order to make it more of a salvation of the Israelite people. So so they both use bitumen. All of them use bitumen to seal the boat because bitumen was very common. And all of them use, now in the Sumerian and Achahisha story, they use a design of boat. Well, the Zua Sutra version doesn't tell you how the boat was designed, just that it had a window. That part of the tablet is broken off. The Achahisha story tells you of a boat that's a round boat. I think it's called a curricle or something like that. That was a popular boat that still was being used into the mid 1900s. There are pictures of people along the Euphrates using these round kind of boats, these bowl looking boats. And some were small, where a couple of people can fit in them. Others were larger, where you can fit animals and things of that nature. So in the telling of the story, they're utilizing familiar styles of boat building for the era. The Noah's version is using a familiar style of boat building for the era in and around the 200s BCE. So, which is one of the other reasons, I mean, between using a style of boat design that was becoming more popular in the 500s to 400s BCE, which would have made it, which is why that boat is built more like a rectangle instead of the cube version that was built in this story. Now, it is interesting that historically there's not much evidence that cube-shaped boats were common during the time frame of the Babylonians. So there is a little questioning, wondering why such a cube-shaped boat. But at the end of the day, a big ass boat that would house all the animals and the people who were going to be on this journey. At the end of the story, they all come off the boat after they release their doves, ravens, or cranes. At the end, but they all get off the boat and they all decide that, hey, we're going to do a sacrifice to the gods. And in doing that sacrifice, the gods smell the flavor in each one, and that they smell it and they're like, ooh, it's good savoring flavor. So the gods all eat. They kept that motif. The gods eat the food of the sacrifice. And they show up. I think Utnapishtim was being a little sarcastic when he said that they came around like flies to the feast. But in this story, the God who started the flood is reprimanded for doing it, told that he was wrong, thought it was an evil act by the other gods, who's judged by that. In the Bible version, the God just sort of apologizes and say that, and gives a sign of a rainbow that I'm never going to flood the earth again, as if he is sorry that he did the flood. Because the statement that he makes in the Bible before the flood is that every thought from man is evil, so I'm going to wipe out man for his evil. At the end of the flood, he promises Noah, I'm never going to do that again because every thought from man is evil. So it's kind of similar in how they chastised Enlil, and Enlil was like, dang, okay, you're right. And this God of the Bible is kind of, dang, you know what, that probably was unnecessary. So because man is still going to be evil no matter what you do from youth, every thought. Of course, we know that's not true. And so Noah then becomes the progenitor of all, his kids become the progenitors of all people. And just as that, just Utnapishtim, he and all the people and the people he saved, now they have to repopulate the earth as well, because now humans are needed to satisfy the gods and take care of the earth in the Babylonian story, whereas in the Bible, man was originally commanded to populate the earth. So now repopulation has to happen as well. But what we can see is that these stories, these motifs, this motif of a flood is a borrowed or commonly known motif. And then when the Bible was being put together in its oral traditions, this is a story, a common story that was also added to the biblical story. And like I said, you can find some other things that are similar, in the sense how Ea tells Utnapishtim, hey, you are a good follower of me, you are a worshiper of me, you're in awe of me. I'm gonna need you to give up your house, give up your, your lands, and move to another city. That's the same thing that happened with Abraham. Abraham had to give up his house, give up his city, move to another place where Ea now becomes in the Yahweh becomes his patron deity, and in Utnapishtim's situation, Ea becomes his patron deity, and then he is the one singled out to be able to save the savior of mankind, whereas Abraham becomes the father of the Israelite people. So when that's one reason why I wanted to read this for you, so that you can see that there are other aspects of the story that you will find in your Genesis story. But the primary one is the flood. Now, one of the things that we know is that it is in a flood story. This flood story didn't ever happen. There has never been a time frame in the history of the earth that we know it, as we know it, that there has been a worldwide flood. A worldwide flood has never happened. A worldwide flood that covers every mountaintop by 18 feet, according to the Bible. There's not enough water on the planet to cover the entire earth. There's not enough water above it, below it, sideways, left ways to cover it. There is that big blue that you see outside in the sky is not water. That is a non-scientific understanding of the sky. So that's just not gonna happen. It's just an impossibility. Even those who are now jumping on the fact and saying that, well, there's the possibility of ringwoodite that is found underneath the earth and it contains water. And the thought theory is, if there is the amount of ringwoodite that they predict, then that will be 3 times the amount of water on the planet. But that's if. And if was a fifth, we'd all be drunk. They don't know. We don't know how much ringwoodite is found. Now, another problem with ringwoodite. Ringwoodite is a rock that, under the pressure that happens deep within the earth, it sucks in water. And the thought process is that if that water can be released, it will be 3 times the ocean. In order for that rock to be released, it has to travel through the mantle. And by traveling through the mantle, the water would not survive to enter above the crust layer of the earth. Right? That's one problem with that thought process. So, and the other problem is that when you see pictures online of ringwoodite, this is manufactured ringwoodite. This is not natural ringwoodite, because ringwoodite has not made its way up. There are some who try to claim that it came up through a volcano, but those are still being debated as to whether or not that's true ringwoodite. So we still are a long way away from being able to say that there's enough water underneath the earth in order to flood the entire planet. When you see seashells on mountains, those are usually younger mountains that we know came from under the water. Like seashells on any of the Hawaiian mountains, they came from underneath the water. The mountain is way bigger below the surface of the water. Jamaica is a mountain that came up from the water. Uh, the Himalayas is mountain that came is seashells that came up from it's mountains that came up from the sea when the tectonic plate of India started merging with the Asian plate, and it pushed that landmass. It started pushing that landmass up. So we don't see that. I mean, so that's why you have seashells, but you don't have seashells on every mountains. Mountains that we know didn't come from underneath the water, there are no seashells, no fossilized seashells on those. And if there were fossilized, if they were on there, their fossilization is older than this story of the Bible is chronologically, by the Bible's chronology, could have happened, which is around 2500 BCE. So we know the story just simply is a false narrative. Never happened. But it's for the people in that time frame. Like I said, there was probably not common knowledge of a localized flood, and that localized flood it most likely came from the Younger Dryas flood. The Sumerians most likely got this idea because it is unknown completely where the Sumerians come from, but it is most thought of that where the Persian Gulf and Iran kind of meet in this little strait, that's where the Sumerians emerged from. And as the Younger Dryas flood would have poured over, and it's mountainous right there, that strait is mountainous, as it would have poured into that land area over the mountains or cut through the mountain, then flooding at, and some estimate 6 feet per day, some say 10 feet per day, that would have pushed the Sumerians up to modern day Kuwait. And it would have been a rush movement, a hurry up and get the hell on kind of movement. You can't grab and pack everything. You just got to get your shit and go. Because if you're flooding 6 feet a day for for a week or two, then you got to get the hell on. You ain't got time to grab stuff. And we've seen examples of something happening in certain cities where people just abandon the city. And so many are theorizing that that's where the Sumerians came from, and that's where the flood narrative for the Mesopotamian people came from. In that regard, also, some theorize that before the Younger Dryas, the Mediterranean was a valley, and then when the water rose, it broke through what is now the Straits of Gibraltar, which then created the Atlantic Ocean, broke through there and then created the Mediterranean, which would have then caused a flood narrative to be told in the Levant because it comes up to the Levant. Those are still theorized. There's a lot more work that has to be done, but we are finding more and more underwater cities, not just around the world, but definitely we are finding them around, but we're also finding underground cities and underground riverbeds underneath the Persian Gulf, underneath the Mediterranean. So for their stories, that's where it may come from. We also have flood narratives from other coastal people in Southwest Asia, and Aztecs and all of them. But you cannot add the Chinese flood stories to it because that's just a flooding of the Yellow River. So please don't bring up the Chinese flood story. That's just a flooding of the Yellow River. It has nothing to do with the Younger Dryas. And you can't bring up the Egyptian flood story because that's just a flooding of the Nile. It has nothing to do with the Younger Dryas. The Nile floods routinely. So, but this Mesopotamian people, these Levantian people, were familiar with some older story that we haven't nailed down yet. And that is where these flood myths starts. But we can see the trail from the Sumerian version of Zoroaster. The Atrahasis, you can either call it Sumerian or you can say it's Assyrian. I go ahead and give it to Assyrian because it was an Assyriologist named Finkel who is the one that translated the story, that found it, translated it, and broke it down. And then the Babylonian story, which is the Epic of Gilgamesh, found within the Epic of Gilgamesh, is that. So, and of course, there are other stories. The Greeks had their own story, which then includes the city of Atlantis. The Greek stories do come after the biblical narrative. Well, the Atlantis version comes before the biblical narrative. There's another flood story. So the Greeks have two flood stories. There's another flood story by a dude named Barabbas. He writes his after the time frame that the biblical narrative had been written. But Plato spoke of the flooding of Atlantis and the flooding of the world kind of scenario as well. And Plato claims that his grandfather is the one who told him about the story. So there are other flood narratives, but all of these flood narratives happen at different time frames, are said to have happened at different time frames. They all don't happen at the same time, but they may come from the Younger Dryas flood. And that is the most likely candidate of these worldwide flood stories. And one last thing before I open up the doors of the church and let guests come on is when you read the biblical version of it and you look at it in Hebrew, the primary word that is used to indicate flooding of the whole world is the word Eretz. The word Eretz doesn't mean the whole world. The word Eretz simply means the general landmass, the general area. Throughout the entire Bible, Eretz is always talking about that general landmass. In the story of Lot and his daughters performing their incestuous relationship, when the daughter said there is no man in the world, it's the word Eretz right there, which means in the general land. Of course, there were other men in the world because they were supposed to go to a different city, but they couldn't get to that. Well, Lot made a deal so they couldn't to not go to that city. So they were just talking about in the general vicinity, there's no man. So that's why they got their daddy drunk. They weren't talking about the whole world. So understand Eretz doesn't mean the whole world in the biblical narrative. So Christians Bible believers should stop utilizing whole world scenario, but they need to in order for Noah's kids to repopulate the entire earth. I don't think the people back then thought of repopulating the earth, but just restarting the Mesopotamian area is all that they was actually is what I'm thinking they were only talking about that. Oh, and one last thing, we did notice that each one of them in every story, they land on top. The boat gets stuck on a mountain. On every story, the boats get stuck on a mountain. Before people bring it up, and you might have already wrote it in the text and I didn't see it when I was reading, the place in Turkey, in the mountains of Ararat, and the Bible says in the mountains of Ararat, not Mount Ararat, in the mountains of Ararat, which is in Turkey. The person who claims that there is that the Noah's flood is there was done by Ron Wyatt, and Ron Wyatt's claims were swiftly debunked. And before they can be consistently and continuously debunked even more so, the Turkish government, our modern day Turkish government, came in and said, no more excavation of this area. We are going to decide that this is, and they turned it into a tourist attraction. While they had enough people still believing it before scientists really knocked the shit out of Ron Wyatt, because it's already been disproven, Turkey was like, we can make some money off this tourist attraction. Turkey has a history of this. Turkey has taken places that they claim that Abraham was at, tourist attraction, and they don't let anybody excavate it. They stop the excavation, or they minimize the excavation of Göbekli Tepe and turned it into a tourist attraction. And in that, they've destroyed a lot of stuff, but they turned Göbekli Tepe into a tourist attraction. Those countries do that, right? Very swiftly, very quickly. I'm not just putting that on Turkey. Other countries have done the same. You can go to Egypt and you can find, I'm gonna talk about that in a video that I hope to shoot later, but we're going to the Day of the Dead parade. But there's a place in Egypt, they turn it, even though they know the information is not true, but they turned it into a tourist trap. So so when you see these things, they are tourist traps. There's money. But the boat-like shape in Turkey is not. It was proven false before they turned it into a tourist trap. So Just go ahead and shut that little piece of shit down right there. If you bring up anything that Ron Wyatt, who was a nurse, not an archaeologist, who never performed a legal archaeological dig, who falsified the pictures of wheels under chariot wheels under the water, uh, and we have mapped the Red Sea. There are no chariot wheels. Ron Wyatt is a fraud, complete and utter fraud. Even his wife later came out and said that he was a fraud. No, it was his children. His children. That was Doriel's wife who said he was a fraud. His children has come out and said that their daddy was a fraud. You know, you got to be a messed up father when your children are willing to come out and say that you were a fraud. All right, so we're gonna open up the doors of the church now for any of your comments, thoughts. Uh, if I don't have anybody in the waiting room, I will try to scroll back through some of the comments to see if there was anything that I may want to comment on. All right, that's far enough up the tickety top. Oh, wait a minute, okay. So trying to go back as far as when I was reading. Nope, nope, nope. Oh, so y'all were just patiently listening. Go ahead, TikTok. I know Facebook ain't saying. All right, let's go up to as far as I can go here. Okay. A whole bunch of stuff from Fred Adams, who I'm ignoring. God created everyone, but he let the devil live. Right? He let the devil live, but he gonna kill all the people. And you know, the guys in the Anunnaki and the Gigi were allowed to survive. They flew up to the heavens. The ancient astronaut theories that they got on spaceships, and they flew up there to um, save themselves from this flood. Let's see, what else I have here? Man being inherently evil came from the Babylonian version. After the Battle of Marduk and Tiamat took the rebellious god Kingu and sacrificed him, using his body to create humans. Therefore, we are made with a rebellious spirit at birth, so to speak. I have to read that one, the Babylonian version. I know the Assyrian and Sumerian version, where they took not Kingu. That I do recall. I do remember reading about them taking Kingu. I think in the Sumerian version they take uh, what Tamuzi, and they use his body. Pull my sheet, but that might be. Oftentimes, those are some of the same guys. Let's see if I can find. Because this one will have both names. Well, no, this is just going to have Sumerian name and the Akkadian name. It's not going to have the. This doesn't have the Babylonian name. Ooh, I need to find one that has the Babylonian names as well. But it is valid that in both kingdoms, both in the Sumerian Akkadians and the Babylonians, that man was made from a combination of clay, and there is one version where man is made from the common ancestor, the hominid, and test tube babies. There are a version where man is made from clay and the blood and flesh of a Anunnaki, and from that Anunnaki we got our soul, we got our spirit, our Holy Ghost. And that they call it a ghost in the Assyrian version, and the Atrahasis is called the ghost. What if the floods are symbolic to the dams they destroyed to wipe out the towns and start over? Um, I don't think it's symbolic of that. I really think it's symbolic of the Younger Dryas flood, because the stories are all told thousands of years later, like it's a societal memory. Um, how big was the ark? Actually, it's interesting. Each story, the boats. So in the Sumerian, in Zuasudra, Antarctica, and Utnapishtim, each boat measures roughly 14,000, like 80 feet, something like that. The Noah version just rounds it up to 15,000, 1,500 feet. Sorry, I said 1,000, but 1,500 feet or something like that. This is your story. This is not my story. I don't think that any of these guys exist. That's kind of interesting. I will acknowledge that to you, Fred. Let me be very clear so that you can have clarity, even though I doubt that clarity is an aspect of thought process you can have. I do not believe in the Anunnaki or any of the gods of the Babylonians or the Assyrians or none of them. So I don't know why you think that I believe in those to be gods, but I don't. So I understand you may be trying to use that as a deflection, but it's a known lie. So if you say it any other time after this, Fred, that those are my stories, those are my gods, then recognize, since I'm telling you and you are hearing me say that it is not, I do not believe in them, then you are committing a sin and you are lying. And I hope you go and repent from that. In the Bible, it was written that the Lord God formed the man from the dust and breathed life into his breath, and the Lord God, and Lord God being the original man, which is very similar to the creation of man in all the story in the Achahisis, that the goddess Mami Ninurta is her name is Mami Ninurta. I forgot the other name for her, but she is the one that killed another god so that man would have a soul and made him out of clay, so dirt. Do you provide references to historical authorities that you cite? Sometimes, but it depends on what we're talking about. Oftentimes, I want people to just go research things for themselves. That's what Robert Murphy said earlier. What I was just reading was tablet 11 of, if you was here while I was reading, and that's why you was asking that question, that's based on, or everything that pretty much everything I've said is based on tablet 11 of the Epic of Gilgamesh, which you can find that. I think tablet, if you live in Philadelphia, I think tablet 11 of the Epic of Gilgamesh is in the Philadelphia Museum. So if you live in Philadelphia, you can literally go and see tablet 11. Right? How would a flood reach 30,000 feet in altitude to cover all the mountains without freezing? Exactly, it would freeze. It literally, Earth would become an ice ball if water rose 18 feet above Mount Everest. Earth would become an ice ball. All the water would have been frozen. So Noah's boat wouldn't have been floating. Right? We're GMO made from the labor. That's what we say. Uh, yeah, we are. Humans are made. You got two variations of the creation of man based on the Babylonian, Assyrian, and Sumerian stories. You got the hominid being infused, the egg of the hominid. I mean, yeah, I think it's the egg of the hominin being placed inside of the womb of an Anunnaki woman, and then the seed of the Anunnaki in that egg, and they had tried it 16 times, until they got to the variation that worked, which then becomes Adapa and Titi. In the Atrahesis, when Ninurta makes man out of clay and the blood of a god, then blood and flesh of a god, and then the ghost imbibes inside that the man being. She makes seven men and seven women, made 14 of them. Let's see. I'm trying to add. Oh, wait a minute. Moral, are you there? Let's see. He's coming up. He had to turn on his microphone and camera. There's no way the flood happened and not one animal tried to kill another. Exactly. Exactly. You got the animals would have killed the. Now notice in the 7-day floods, they pack food and you can pack enough food. And in the Atrahasis, it says just the animals of the steppes, which means the animals in their general vicinity. The Noah's Ark version is every animal on the planet. There is absolutely no way you can pack enough food for every animal on the planet. That's one. And there's no way it's going to be packed for a 40-day, 40-night, and then a whole year that they're just floating around until the water recedes. Every animal would have died. And of course, they would have died in that higher elevation. They would not have been. Also, other than the Earth being an ice ball, there's not enough air at the top of Everest in order for humans nor animals to survive, nor fire to survive. There's not enough air. When you know there's not enough air for fire, you just not gonna work. So it's just not gonna work. You can't. It just won't work. The gentleman who was trying to come on, maybe you have to refresh your the stream with your camera. Now that you've made adjustments to your camera and microphone, try to just go out of the live, come back into the live, and see if it works. Then, no, that's cool. Robert, he said, Robert said, I'm just asking. I'm learning references will help with research. I appreciate that you are very steady. One of the best references, other than just going and reading the information for yourself, like reading the Atrahasis, reading the the Zohar version, and like we just read the Tablet 11, you can go to Google, utilize Google Scholar, and you can find PhD papers on damn near everything. You can find a PhD paper on it, and you'll be able to look at the reviews. Also, archaeological journals is a very popular way to do it, where you can find, and in archaeological journals, they usually will tell you who wrote peer reviews towards that, in regards to it, I should say. Because peer reviews, you can have it go both ways, and then you can research what's the scholarly consensus of that, and to have that information. And the PhD papers have to cite their references, as well as the journals. They have to cite their references as well. But in our world today, Google, if you use even the AIs, if you ask it a question, we talked about this yesterday. But when you ask the question, try to be as unbiased as you possibly can when asking a question, because these AIs can be biased. Some of them definitely are biased. Right. The Bible does tell a shorter story, because the Bible is trying to take this polytheism that the more ancient Israelites who started writing these stories in around 700 BCE, and then when they're editing it in the 2nd century, 3rd century BCE, they're trying to morph it into a monotheism. So this is why we have some issues with it. This is why there is the idea of the Yahwist, the priestly, the Deuteronomist, and I think it's the Elohist. Yeah, the E-text, the Elohist, where they're trying to merge it all together to make it make sense. And we talked about that yesterday when we was going over the use of Elohim versus El and Elyon. But there again, we know that this story is a made-up story, borrowed from a common motif. So the whole idea of Noah is a fictitious person. If Noah is fictitious, then Shem is fictitious. If Shem is fictitious, then the entire line all the way up to Joseph, who is Jesus' daddy, is fictitious. Said Noah should have known to stop raining when the ark came to us to rest. Probably should have. But you know, they were both in all the stories, they were told to shut themselves up and close the windows. But you would think you still know when the rain stops. Oh, and there was another study that was done that it was a model experiment that demonstrates that if the amount of rain that is described in the Noah story, that it would have caused so much friction that the water would have been boiling. And I know it's hard for us to understand that now when we, in our experience of rain, when it rains, and especially like it's supposed to rain today in San Antonio, but the sun shining, it's partly cloudy. It always lies to us about rain. But you know, the rain feels cold. The rain doesn't feel like it has any heat, but rain impact creates friction, just like anything that impacts anything creates friction. And that amount of rain would have created so much friction that the water would have been boiling hot. So there will be no fish, not to mention the mixture of fresh and salt water would have killed everything in the water as well. Chance.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing? Oh, are you over 21?
I'm 21.
Let me get you to speak up a little bit.
I'm 21.
Okay. Are you a believer?
Yes, I'm a born again. I grew up in Utah, so I grew up Mormon, but I became Christian.
Okay. I mean, to me, they're both Christians. So,
yeah,
but I get what you're saying, though.
But,
so, in regards to the Noah story,
I wanted to ask you about, like, have you ever read like the other stories of the same time and how they like coincide?
When you say other stories of the same time,
of like before the flood, like is it Epic of Gilgamesh? Like some of these things written.
the Epic of Gilgamesh was written well before the biblical narrative was ever written.
But doesn't it say the same? I don't know. I swear I saw something about some ancient flood. It was like the same thing, the same flood narrative. Like
Yeah,
I know the flood is real.
They're very similar narratives, but they have a lot of distinct differences. So it's a common motif, but people telling the stories don't make the flood real. So do you believe that the flood covered the entire planet?
I think so. I think it covered the entire planet.
Can life?
Every culture has a flood story.
Nope. Every culture does not have a flood story. That's a common mistaken. That's a common statement that is incorrect. The Chinese, for example, do not have a worldwide flood story. They have a flooding of the Yellow River story, but they do not have a worldwide flood. Most Native American tribes have river flood stories, but they do not have a worldwide flood story.
Well, in the Bible, I don't know. In the Bible, the people might have not have been spread out that far until after. The people didn't spread out until a little later, I think, till maybe the whole world. I don't know.
So, if you were to,
but they do spread through the world kind of slowly. I don't think they were.
Wait, when I start talking, don't cut me off.
Sorry, my bad.
So when you look at, so I did a video about a year or so ago when I was in Tennessee in Chattanooga. The indigenous people who were there, we can see through archaeology that those people have been there for roughly about 25,000 years. So they were already there before any character in the Bible existed. according to biblical chronology.
25,000 years? The Bible says it's only 6,000 years.
Yeah, the Bible's wrong. But they've been there.
That put it in the timeline.
The Bible's wrong. But here's the thing. The people at, I forgot what it's freaking called, but the people who are there, they do not have any interruptions in their history. Through the Neolithic period, all the way up to modern day, they have never had an interruption. And that area has never flooded beyond a river flood. But they've always been there. So it's impossible for the flood story to have happened, and that became the repopulation of the earth.
I mean, if I think about it how I think about it, I honestly think 6,000 years. That's how old the earth is. That puts it right into the timeline for me. But
even if we look 6,000 years ago and those people who were living in Tennessee 6,000 years ago, they never died out due to a flood during the history of the flood. Some of them, the only time they had any mass dying is when colonization happened. But beyond that, they've never died out. We have pottery through their history. We have other artifacts, arrowheads. We understand how their housing was constructed, their usage of the Tennessee River. We know those people were there during the time, because the flood would have happened around 25 to 2300 BCE. We can see that those people were there before that, during that, and after that. So how would you explain that with the biblical timeline if those people were always there?
Well, that's just, then you got to get into, do you believe the real timeline of scientists and everything, or do you just go 100% Bible? I mean, that's where everyone has their own level,
Well, that's not a level. That's just, I'm going to use cognitive dissonance to ignore the information.
But what cognitive dissonance?
I don't have cognitive dissonance.
Are you a believer of God? Like, are you a believer of God?
No.
Oh, you're not?
Mm-mm.
I thought you were.
Why would you think that?
Just how you asked. But
how I ask or act?
Just how you were acting. I don't know. I'm not. It's not bad. I just thought you were.
No, I was just trying to understand the word you use. I didn't say ask or act are two different words, so I didn't know which one you was using. That would give two different meanings. No. I see. I don't have cognitive dissonance. I go wherever the information lands. So if the information, one of the things that helped me leave Christianity is the fact that when I go just wherever the information lands, it lands where the Bible is not telling a true story. It's definitely not telling history, right? And as far as saying like, well, I don't believe the scientists, that's just choosing not to accept information that has been proven to be true through multiple techniques of science.
Yeah, it does get proven true, but then there's always another proof.
Not when it comes to the fact that people were on the planet before, during, and after the flood. In almost every landmass on the planet. There's never been well, these people actually weren't here.
So you're saying people have just been on the earth, like it didn't come from at least Africa,
But that would be like 200,000 years ago. So that would have
humans been around?
Homo sapiens? Homo sapiens?
Humans.
Well,
as we are.
Humans as we are, which is Homo sapiens, roughly about 200,000 to 300,000 years. Now, of course, there's been other variations: Homo erectus, Homo erectus, Neanderthals. There's been other variations, but Homo sapiens has been around for about 200,000 to 300,000 years. civilizations, we can identify different civilizations. And even if we started at the 12,000 year mark, we know that there's been civilizations around the world for the last 12,000 years that never died out because of a flood.
The Mayans?
I said because of a flood.
Yeah, because of a flood.
Yeah. Like the Chinese people from 12,000 years to today never died out because of a flood and never died out, period. Now, were they called Chinese 12,000 years ago, 6,000 years ago? No. But they were of the same people and their tribal names just changed. How they identify themselves just changed. But their civilizations show a continuation throughout all of that time. Are you there? Oh, his phone. He's still there. I think he went to check something or his phone. Somebody called him.
I don't. Is the Chinese really one continuous civilization, or is it a couple civilizations they kind of put into one and say it's just been one continuous? You know?
No, you can see where. So of course, like all people of today, there's very few people of the day that's always been named, always had the same name. So, but when you track their history, we can see when the names change. You know, like when the Mongolians were dominant in that area, they weren't calling themselves Chinese. They were Mongolian. The name Chinese come from when, after the land became known as China. So when it was like the state of Wu, they were people of the state of Wu. They would not have been calling themselves Chinese. But we can see how the six warring states came into union and then became one people.
Mm. The state of Wu is what they originally were?
No, that's just one of the warring states. Yeah. So there were six warring states, and then they fought, and then they became one unified country. But before that, they were separate. Kind of like how there were 13 colonies, and the 13 colonies then considered themselves one nation until after the Revolutionary War, and then it became one nation. Right? Now, yes. And then the people in the Louisiana Territory weren't part of that until it was purchased, and now the people of the Louisiana Territory are now part of the United States. So the continued development of civilization, the names, you have to track the names. But the people have always been consistently there.
Texas used to be Mexico.
Exactly. So the people have consistently been there. So the Chinese civilization, what we call the Chinese civilization, has constantly been people in that area. And they've been in that area at least 125,000 years.
Mm. Well, very interesting. Well, I got to head out, bro. Well, have a good one, bro.
I appreciate it. Have a good one.
Hey, bro.
Marion, you don't be using my middle name, Marion. You don't make me drive to wherever you are and fight you. Tell me. Oh, people said you're wrong. I don't know what some of your statements are about. I don't know if you're talking about me or somebody else, or you talk to somebody else about do you believe and all this stuff. I'm not sure who you talk to now. There was another gentleman who kept trying to come up. He came up, but then he left. So we're gonna see if he comes back. Whenever he does come back, I'll make sure that he's first. Yeah, and Akush, I wouldn't say that the Mesopotamian flood myth came from the Hindu flood myth, but there is the Hindu flood myth of Manu, where Manu was told by a deity, I don't know the name of the deity, that there was going to be this flood and Manu was told to save some people and to build a boat, and he built the boat. And I think in Manu's story, he lands on a mountain as well, and then they repopulate the earth. Oh, please check out my Avatar of Lord Vishnu. Yeah. So there are other flood stories, but they all don't happen at the same time.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
What up, Marion?
Hey, you got me. I'm gonna try to stay on Earth today. I'm trying to stay on Earth today.
All right. What do you think about the flood story?
Man, well, of course they come to your lives all the time, and every time I learn something new.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm not gonna lie. You know, I learned something new because I'm a searcher. I want to grow. I want to know the real me.
So what did you learn new today?
Well, I learned some things about the story, like when you were speaking about the ark and how Noah had to load the ark, and then certain animals were specific, even though he had to have a male and a female,
Mm-hmm.
and he had to name them. But all that, okay, that's cool. But to look at it in a bigger mindset, like you got this ark, you covered this ark with yours, and every animal that God presented at the time, male and female.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they living, but think about the responsibilities, the feeding,
Right.
the shitting. You know what I'm saying? To clean up. You know what I'm saying? And that made me, they opened my eyes. You know what I'm saying? But people don't look at it like that. But just the conversation you was having, that it did something to my perception that I had already. That I thought I knew, that I was sitting in the dark. You know what I'm saying? Because the Bible, it tell you things and it try to teach you things with those words they put down,
Mm-hmm.
but it don't open you up all the way. And when I heard this story about Noah being talked about today on your podcast, it opened my eyes up on a whole nother level. And I've been teaching and learning this thing called Christianity for almost 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
And just a little input, that little enlightenment that you shared today, I got a whole lot to think about when I go to work today. So I thank you for that, bro.
My pleasure. Yeah, and you brought up another point. It would, to have that many animals, which if you had every animal on the planet and every creepy and crawly thing and every bird, the amount of shit that would have been on that boat, a plague would have broken out. And there's no way that 8 people could have managed to feed and keep clean the ark for a year. It would have been, can you imagine the stench?
It wasn't for a year. It was for 40 days.
Nope.
40 days.
Nope. You gotta read.
It was the story told.
The story, you didn't read the story.
Hey, that's what I'm here for.
Listen,
because
but you gotta stop talking. You gotta stop talking and let me finish what I'm saying.
Okay.
According to so what you're taking from the story and making it just 40 days and 40 nights is the fact that it supposedly rained for 40 days and 40 nights. But then they stayed on the boat for a little over a year before the waters receded low enough for them to get off the boat. You understand what I'm saying?
Correct.
So it just rained for 40 days and 40 nights. Still took them a year before the water went down. So that's why they were on the boat for over a year.
Well, when I said a year, I did predict, I approached you about it because when I read it and I understood that story many times, it didn't ever tell me it took a whole year. It would just give me an estimate. Because after the fact that the water went down, he sent the dove out, and then it didn't come back. So it means he didn't find the land.
Right.
And he said another story, they sent another one out, and they bought a piece of a tree bark, a leaf or something.
An olive branch.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, he brought an olive branch.
Yes. But I didn't never understand the whole time frame because, yes, of course, when it like today we got to rain today, it's not gonna drop totally today. So I understood that 40 days, 40 nights of raining, it's gonna take a little time for the earth to get back hard. But I understood that. But at the same time, like it's a lot of things inside these Bible stories that people don't understand. And at the same time, these stories are written by men who try to gain control. It's my whole mindset. And this is the reason for your deconstruction, because you came into the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still learning, even though I can be actually speaking about my own experience, my own opinion, and I read some of the comments that people said about the podcast the other day. But my own opinions is my own opinions. You know, that's a gift from God, my creator.
Okay.
You know, this is an opportunity to be free.
All right.
You know what I'm saying?
I know you said that multiple times. So
yes, but everybody don't understand the concept, so I'm trying to keep it basic. Like, don't let it.
I know,
No
but
one else.
But we don't do that on this show. We don't like put out our belief system in a way to try to convince people. So everybody understands your thought process is everybody should be able to believe what they want to believe. Don't try to shut somebody down, so on and so forth. So what we deal with here is we just deal with information, and then you come to your own conclusion. But I do correct things. So let me show you in Genesis chapter 8. It says, "But God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and all the domestic animals that were with him on the ark. And God made a wind blow over the earth, and the waters subsided. The fountains of the deep and the windows of the heaven were closed. The rain from the heavens were restrained. The water gradually receded from the earth. And at the end of 150 days, the water had abated in the seventh and in the seventh month, and on the seventh day of the month, the ark came to rest on top of Mount Ararat." So we already got 100. It took 150 days before the waters, before the top of Mount Ararat, the mountains of Ararat can come up, right? So you see how we got 40 days of rain, 40 days, 40 nights of rain. We got 150 days of the wind blowing. What is that noise? Okay. So just mute your phone for a second. If you still need to do whatever you're doing. So we got 40 days and 40 nights. Now we got 150 days, 40 days and 40 nights. Then we got 150 days that it took for just the top of Mount Ararat to show up. Right? So now we're at 190 days. So we way past 6 months, right? And then it says the waters continued to abate until the 10th month. In the 10th month, the first day of the month, and the tops of the mountains appeared. So that's when the mountains appeared. Then it goes to how after in the 40 days, the windows, at the end of 40 days, Noah opened the window. So that's 40 more days. And then he sent out a raven, and it went to and fro from the waters and dried up the earth. And he sent out a dove to see if the waters had subsided on the ground. But the dove found no place to set its feet, which is similar to how the Babylonian story said it. And it returned to the ark, and the water was still upon the face of the whole earth. So he put out his hand and took it and brought it into the ark with him. He waited another 7 days, and again set out the dove of the ark, and the dove came back to him in the evening, and in his beak was a freshly plucked olive leaf. So Noah knew that the waters had subsided. Then he waited another 7 days and set the dove out, and did not return anymore. And so but then in the 6th month of the first year, and the first month of the first day of the month, the waters were dried up in the earth, and Noah removed the covering. So what you have to do then is look at when these other events were happening, as far as the 7th month and then the 6th month and the days and all that sort of thing. And what the math comes out to be is about 377 days of the entire episode. So that's why it's over a year that they were on this boat. When you add up all the time frames that's given and the time frames of things happening, of events happening.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I was commenting in the comments because I missed the phone. Let's say I understand it, bro. I understand. I'm. It's like me being a child. Can I tell you how I'm coming from with these stories? All these stories, all the experience about God's in our history, not just the melanin history about human.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, my opinion on this. Can I go there? Can I?
I'll let you go as far as I can let you go. But so go ahead and start.
Respectfully, okay. Man, I grew up listening to my mama. I ain't grew up with a daddy. I had a mama and a grandma. To each his own. Okay. And I realized that I had these rules to abide by that my mama put down, my grandma put down. And as I grew, 5 years old, I had to go to school. I had a teacher. I had to respect him or her as I grew a little bit more. I got to deal with this thing called law.
Okay. I need you to bring it to the story that we're talking about.
I'm trying to make it so everybody can understand it. I'm basic. Everybody can understand big words. I told you about this, man.
Right. I'm with you. And that's fine. That's why I try not to use big words all the time.
Well, we can if you want to go there.
Right. But I mean,
I try to keep mine basic because God can he take the simple thing to confirm the wise.
Well, I don't know about that.
You have to do what you want to do.
I don't know about God taking anything, but we're talking about Noah's flood.
No, I was talking about scripture in the Bible, what you always relating to in your lives. And I can't come to you like this unless I be here, bro. And never disrespectful.
I mean, we're talking about what's in the Bible, but we're talking about the flood aspect in the Bible. You with me? Like we're trying to stay on subject. I'm trying to stay on subject. That's what I'm saying. So right.
And I took my sip out, that water. I took my sip out the mindset.
So do you believe the flood happened?
This the reason I was trying to say what I said. You can believe when your mama said Christmas gonna be this day, Christmas that day. I just had something to believe in. But actually, like growing up, my disappointment wasn't my reality wasn't lined up with my stories. From the ones who I trusted. So of course, with my own experience and my own feelings and my own mental everything, I had to start questioning things. Because my reality is very important. My life is very precious. So no matter how many preachers, scholars, or teachers, whatever they call it, except parents, if they ain't preaching the truth, if they ain't aligning with what I'm feeling like, I'm gonna let them do them. No disrespect. But I gotta figure this out and make this feel good for me, what works for me. Because no two minds, no two tasks, no two anything, things are the same. I don't care how you preach a story about what John said, about what Paul said in the Bible, about what Jesus said. All this he say, she say, cause now one else want to hold up. You said don't interrupt the host, but the host got the right to respect.
Stop. The host can interrupt. That's the difference. The host can interrupt, especially when you're going way away from the subject matter. And also when you make certain statements, I'm going to interrupt. And in one statement, and one of the aspects of what you're talking about is the fact that there is, when it comes to philosophical things, you can have your own thought process, your own whatever. That's perfectly fine. But when it comes to factual things, then your thought process don't matter. So when we're talking about if Noah's flood actually happened or it didn't happen, or even if it's possible, we're talking about factual things, right? So how you feel about it doesn't matter.
Okay, well, I'm asking something else. I ain't trying to cut you off. How I feel about it, I don't even thought about it. This history, I wasn't there. Because people tell me there's God, there isn't a God. They'll say people tell me a story about Jesus, Noah, Daniel, Zechariah, all those people's in the Bible. But still, Bathsheba, at the same time, I still got a story going on with my mama, her past, my daddy, his past, my grandma, their past. It's history to everything. But everything don't have nothing to do with me. At the same time, you have these different religions. You said these people said believe in Christ, these people said believe in Buddha. But at the same time, what's still right for you? That's what I'm trying to tell these people.
Okay, but here's
what you preaching, what TD Jakes And not saying fuck you like that's in disrespect, like, but you gotta do what's right for you, bro. Cause your mama can lead you the wrong way, your daddy can lead you the wrong way, cause y'all might not be on the same accord, y'all might not have the same energy. That's all I'm saying. What happened on that art, or supposed to happen on that art, they was supposed to be built. I wasn't there. Kurliska had no effect on my life bars.
Okay, but stop. One, you're getting all agitated, but stop. It does have an effect, whether you realize it or not. And here's the effect. If the Noah story did not happen, then the whole thing leading to your God, everything about your God, then is false. So then your God doesn't exist. If your God doesn't exist, then the Jesus character doesn't exist. So now you are believing and basing your life off of your belief of somebody who doesn't exist in this spiritual realm, right? Now, whether Jesus existed as an itinerant preacher, possible, but then is the story about him true? It's not. So then if the story about him is not true, because Noah's Ark never happened, so there's no line of Shem to get to Jesus, and the story isn't true, then there is no salvation through Jesus. And if you're basing your life off that, then it does impact your life.
Okay, so what you said, if you, the part about Jesus Christ, if Jesus have an effect on your life, this story does have an effect on you. So when I say no, it don't have no meaning to me, why you question that? Why you just say what you said? Why you just couldn't accept what I just said?
Does Jesus have an effect on your life? The belief in Jesus and that and
I didn't say it. I didn't say it. I did not say that. I said what I said. I don't believe in all these stories that people come to change and come up with.
But you believe in a God, right? You believe in a God?
I believe in a higher self, a higher energy, a higher presence.
And
yes.
What do you base that belief on? That belief is based.
My experience that you might never understood. We talked about this the other day. My experience could be my own experience and not facts. But who said my experience was 100%?
So where would you? So do you believe in a heaven and a hell?
So now I gotta answer this question like this. Yes, I create my own space. Yeah, I believe in heaven and hell. Here on earth, I work my ass off to create my heaven on earth.
Okay, so you believe it. Okay.
I got the mindset.
So that's all I was trying to establish is where your beliefs come from. If they come from the Bible, then this matters. If it doesn't come from the Bible, then this doesn't matter. Then you're right. It doesn't make any difference to you because your life, your belief in afterlife and God doesn't come from the Bible. So then, yeah, you're right. This doesn't affect you at all. It has nothing to do with you.
Yes, but it still don't take it as something disrespectful or I'm putting anyone else down because we all here to what? Deconstruct ourselves.
I don't cut people off for those reasons. I don't move the subject matter for those reasons. I move the subject matter or cut people off to have a clear, concise direction of the show instead of it just being kind of like, even though sometimes it does get all over the place, that's the reason. So I'm not insulted or anything like that. I just want the show to be a concise show. That's all.
Respect.
Yeah. So, yeah, so this doesn't affect you at all. So it doesn't affect your thought process, your beliefs. So yeah, Noah's Ark has no effect on you, just like it has no effect on me. I could care less about this story as far as my own personal life is concerned. But I talk about it because people are deconstructing from the belief of this story. And when you understand it at a deeper level of how false it is, not just because you just don't like it, but you deeply and intellectually understand how false it is, it strengthens your resolve for you walking away and not believing in this book.
Hey, I thank you. I thank you for saying that. I appreciate that.
No problem. But let me let some other people get on here because today's show is going to be short. Because I got to, 30 minutes, I'm done.
All
right, appreciate it. Going to the Day of the Dead parade here in San Antonio. And yes, I'm going to do a video after I get some pictures and everything about how they've they've taken Mesoamerican or Mexican traditions that they would deem as pagan and incorporated them into their Christianity. I did want to answer this question that Divinely Autistic put up here. How can Noah speak for the whole earth if he is just in one spot? That is why earlier I was saying that the word that is used there is eretz. Eretz doesn't mean the whole world in all actuality. Eretz mean like the general land area that they know about, right? So even though it's translated as the whole world in most Bibles, it really just means the general land area. But you're right, Noah could not have known what was going on in the whole world. He only had that perspective of where he was at. Jeremiah was a bullfrog. The Jeremiah getting ready to come up. And me and my wife were just listening to that song 2-3 days ago. Jeremiah, you over 21?
Yeah. Listen, I would have to check you back though. I'm sorry.
Hold on.
I'm just going into the parking lot.
Hold on.
So let me get you when I come up.
Oh.
Is that okay?
Yeah. I'm only gonna be on for about 30 minutes though.
Oh man.
So you're gonna be longer than that?
I'm just gonna pull out my car because once I go in, I'm in right now. The moment I come out, that's it. I'll be on with you. So give me.
Okay.
I'll check back. All
right.
Sorry. All right.
What I'm gonna do? I'm gonna mute Jeremiah. Oh, he muted himself. But just unmute yourself whenever you're ready. Unless I got somebody else up here and we talk. So let me see what some of the comments you guys are making. I don't know why y'all keep talking to Fred. Fred has nothing to add. Oh, but I saw this one, Isaac, but he said they were actually on the boat for. I'm gonna use this as an argument next time somebody says 1 year to God. 1 day is as 1,000 years to God. They were actually on the boat for 377,000 years, not 377 days, because 1 day is as 1,000 years to God. I like that. I would encourage everybody. I know we read through. If you weren't here when we read through the tablet 11 of the Epic of Gilgamesh, I would advise you to go read it. Also, read the Autohesis and read the story, Zor story. You will see that there are differences. I know I did a paid webinar where we broke all of it down. I had it up on a whiteboard, broke it all down, went through it all. So the people who participated on that one, I had it lined up where you can see what each one of them had in similarities and which each one of them had difference in all the same subject matters that they talk about. So if you participated in that one, you still should have access to that. So go back and watch that as well. But yeah, we can see the development of this Noah story, which we know then is something that they just picked up from somebody else, right? Noah never experienced any of these things. And like the young man who was on here in the beginning, there are so many civilizations that we know existed. The Minoans, we can see their civilization go through their whole process without a break. The Egyptians, their whole civilization without a break. The Ethiopians, whole civilizations without a break. So we can see all these civilizations that have existed and they never had a break in their civilizations. They've had wars, they've been conquered, they've lost territories, but they have never had a break as far as everyone dying, unless that dying happened because someone conquered them, right? And when you track these, you can see how their names change or how smaller tribes grew to be larger tribes. So like the Akkadians and Sumerian were a small tribe of people that grew into a large tribe, that grew into the Akkadian Sumerian Empire. And then they were pushed back and we had the development of the Hittites and the Assyrians, and the Egyptians were present during the whole time frame, going back and forth into their conquering of the Levant and the Mesopotamia, and then losing it and then coming back, and then the Hyksos comes in and then they go. So we can see all these changes in history. And we understand this by looking at pottery and language. So it's not only just C14 dating or uranium dating or core samples, but we can also date these things based on language and pottery and the way things are constructed. And so let me give you an idea. And I thought about this today when I was driving this morning. How many of you know that you can go into a neighborhood and you can say, oh, these houses were built in the 1970s. These houses, well, I know some of y'all ain't old enough to do that, but off memory, but can go through a neighborhood and say, these houses were built in the 1970s. These houses were built in the 80s. These houses were built in the 90s. These were built in the 2000s, 2010, and so on and so forth, because of the style that they are built in, right? So this one house that I bought, and then it depends on where you are, the different styles. This one house that I bought, because when I was growing up in the 80s, I recognized that in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s in Cobb County, the doctors and lawyers, the rich people, lived in cedarwood houses, those 3-story, kind of 3 tri-level cedarwood houses, those rich people houses. So in the early 2000s, in the late 90s, in early 2000, when I moved back to Atlanta, I wanted one of those houses. But that housing design was not being built at that time frame. So in order for me to get a cedarwood home, I had to buy a house that was built in the 80s, right? So when we're looking at chronology, you can tell when things happened. So when I was bringing up the Native American tribe that was in Tennessee around Chattanooga, we can look at the way they built their houses, the way the boats they use, the pottery they use. All of that tells the story of around what time frame these people were in existence. All of that shows that. How do you get on here, Cruz? Click on the link. Here's the link again. Did you already talk about how problematic it is that Yahweh didn't save any bacteria, fungi, or insects? He did save insects. He does say it in every creepy crawly thing. But he says nothing about bacteria or fungi, which there are so many species of bacteria and fungi that would have died in the water because of the mixture of the salt and the salt water and the seawater. How did all that dead material get processed if there was no decomposers to break down the things that died? Exactly. If something like that happens, so much of the bacteria would have died that decomposition would have been terrible. It would have been dead bodies all over the place. At least in the Babylonian version, it says that Nergal received all the people, and then all of them were just clay, right? They would turn to dirt. But let me think. If there was some type of worldwide flood like that, then all of those people's bodies, well, most of them should have been underneath mud. So they would have been kind of buried, maybe that's the excuse. But decomposition would have definitely drastically have slowed down. And here's another thing to think about there, Isaac. Here's another thing, Isaac. If all the people on the planet had died, wouldn't we find fossilized humans on top of mountains and things of that nature? And if they were floating around for 377 days, we should find fossilized humans of a different type in a land area where that group never existed. You understand what I'm saying? Like, you should find an Egyptian body that floated to Southwest Asia, and when the waters receded, that body or those bodies ended up in Southwest Asia, and then some of them ended up in China, some of them ended up in the Americas. We should see groups of people, skeletal systems, DNA all over the world. And we should see fossilized humans all over the world. So when they bring, the next time somebody bring up to me about some damn seashells, where are all the fossilized humans and other animals all over the world on the same geological strata? They should all be in the same geological strata. They can't be like in different levels, all the same. There's just too much science that simply disproves the Bible. There's just too much science. I'm trying to hit this. Moshe. Oh, I guess Moshe really wasn't trying to come up. Ashker said, Christians believe that after death, the soul remains in body. After death, they're just sleep, but doesn't the body decompose and become dust? Then how could soul stay inside the body? Here's what's funny about that is that if you had 100 Christians in a room, now let's just say 10. If you had 10 Christians in a room of different denominations, you'll get a different answer. Many of them will tell you that as soon as you're absent from the body, you're absent. As soon as you die, you're absent from the body and you're with the Lord. One dude tried to tell me that you move into the future, so your soul is not in the body. Even though that countermands how in Revelations it said that the seas will give up their dead and the graves will give up their dead. You can tell that this is written by people who thought that the body, the skeletal system of the body, will always remain where it is, that it wouldn't decay to the point of seemingly never existing. So you'll get a different answer from many different Christians on whether soul sleep exists or it doesn't. Because how were people in Abraham's bosom in the rich man and Lazarus story, where Lazarus was in Abraham's bosom, and then the rich man was in Abaddon. Obviously, by that time, by first century Judaism, people's bodies, souls went somewhere other than just Sheol, which was just kind of now Sheol prior to 2nd century BCE was considered after you die, you just considered to be in this shadowy place, right? So when you go prior to the Persians releasing the Babylonians, so prior to 500 BCE, they were just in a shadowy place. That's why Samuel was brought to speak with Saul from the shadowy place. It is after they have the influence of the Persians and the Greeks that all of a sudden your soul goes somewhere. And then, but they will argue about soul sleep like a champ. It's extremely difficult to form a fossil, especially in those conditions. Actually, those conditions are more ripe to form a fossil than the simple burial. Just like we see there are more fossils, we usually find fossils in areas where the body, the animal or the human or whatever, went through some type of devastation, like when we find a swift ice age and the freezing, and we got that whole woolly mammoth and everything that we find in those, when there's all of a sudden a freezing, or when there's a mudslide. And the Bible situation would have created a mudslide type situation, so there should be plenty of bodies. And now I know this is some bullshit, but it would be nice if it wasn't, because if this was Christoph Porzingis,
no,
if I'm a fan, I would be like, oh hell yeah. This will be the second level highlight of my day, because my wife is always the highlight of my day. But I know it's not Christoph Porzingis. This ain't KD.
No, it's not. It's not.
Oh, you got a little accent to you though. You almost tricked me.
But the Hawks do look good this year though, despite the loss. Despite the loss.
Once the team gets used to each other, because that's what I saw Wednesday. They're just not used to each other yet. You know.
But it depends on because I used to be a Knicks fan, and Kristaps is my favorite player, so it just depends on his health basically, because you need him for the playoffs.
I think he's gonna be good. He looked good in the Euro League, in the Euro game in the summer. So, and we just got to monitor his minutes.
Yeah, and that Trey Young Kristaps pick and roll looked good, but they ran it like twice.
Yeah,
I wanted it to run it like more.
I think we'll see what this team is really about when we get close to the All-Star break.
Yeah,
they have about 40 games. They have 40 some odd games under their belt. By then, they should be used to each other. They should understand how to play with each other a lot better.
Yeah, but the East is easy. I mean, I can come off the couch right now and get a team to the playoffs in the East. Okay. You'll be fine.
Yeah, let's get to the subject matter because I got to get off here early today.
Yeah, listen, it's like, so I maybe I missed what if you mentioned it before, but how exactly big was this boat, like in terms of like meters or?
I think it comes out to 1,500 feet is the size of the boat. Let me make sure. But I think it's 1,500 feet.
1,500 feet.
Yeah, it's 30 cubits long, 50 cubits wide. Oh, my bad. This is calculated to be about 510 feet long, 85 feet wide. So I want somebody to do the math on it.
About the size of 5 football fields.
Yeah, 5 football fields long, and almost a football field wide.
And that was big enough to fit like 4,000 species of snakes, all different species of 12,000 species of birds. Like I'm really trying to understand, because I don't know, like you're more scientifically, than me. So how did that work? Because I don't think you can even fit like that in a warehouse.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. There's never been a ship long enough to fit that many species of animals. Even if the number of species of animals was lower, or even if you only took one of every species, meaning like if you took one snake, one pair of snakes, right?
Mm-hmm.
One pair of horses, one pair of lions, even if you took one of every species, one pair, it's still not enough to cover. Because I think some people have estimated there were like 6,000 species, like general species at the time. That still would be at least 12,000 animals based on one version of Noah's flood. But of course, the other version of Noah's flood says that he took, and this is all found within the Bible, one chapter apart, says that they took one pair of every unclean animal and 7 pairs of every clean animal. So now you've taken the number and you've increased. So from 12,000 to a whole nother thousands of numbers. You still can't get all of that, just that on the boat.
Yeah, but even then, let's say you took an eagle on there, it would have to somehow evolve into like a parrot or something that we have like today. Like how?
Yeah,
like that's where I'm struggling.
And we have there's zero records of eagles becoming blue jays or blue jays becoming eagles. So you're
exactly
right. It has to be 2 eagles, 2 ospreys, 2 cranes, 2 blue jays, 2 pigeons, which they could have left the pigeons. We need pigeons. But and mind you, also 2 of every creepy crawly thing as well. So you know how many species of insects there are?
Yeah, we could have done without the spiders though. I don't know why they had to take them on there.
I like spiders.
You like spiders?
Yeah, my wife been trying to get me to kill this spider on our back porch. I'm like, no, that thing catches flies, it catches mosquitoes. The spiders and dragonflies are your friend. They eat mosquitoes and other bugs. They your friends.
Okay.
Yeah. I know they get on your nerves, especially when you walk through a web and you ain't see it and that's all over you and it's irritating.
Mhm.
But nah, you gotta keep the spiders, man. You gotta keep the spiders. Yeah. But I'm with you though. Roaches. Why roaches? Now roaches would have helped with Isaac's statement earlier. At least the roaches could have helped with the decomposition of all the dead bodies and dead animals and stuff that was laying around. Thank you for the roses, Morana.
Yeah, some cockroaches eat concrete apparently, so it would have helped. Yeah,
I've never heard that before. That's crazy.
really. No, they're like Egyptian cockroaches. They eat concrete.
Mm. Wow. That's some shit there. I know they eat wood. I didn't know they eat concrete.
Yeah, it's tough to understand. But I don't know. Maybe there's some explanation that I'm not really quite getting or catching. I don't know.
Yeah, the explanation is that it never happened. That's the explanation. It never happened. It's an impossibility for it to happen.
Mhm.
Like one of the easiest things to look at is the fact that it claims that it covered the tops of every mountain on the planet. Mount Everest, although not as tall as it is today, wasn't that much shorter than it is today. Because it only grows by like 3 centimeters a year or something like that. So it was still high as shit. If water covered that height, then all the water would be frozen and there's not enough air up there. And then the people would have froze on the boat. And the animals would have froze on the boat. And then how did the water get there?
Is there a possibility it would have happened maybe on a smaller scale, like not like a mountain, but like a hill or some sort of story that they would have exaggerated?
Well, so we don't know the original story of where any of these flood stories come from. But if there was the Younger Dryas is the Younger Dryas flood is the most likely candidate. Thank you for the heart plus. If the Younger Dryas is the most likely candidate, if that's the case, then we're talking about a flood that pretty much just created the Mediterranean and created the Persian Gulf for those people. That would have been their knowledge of it. That would have covered, that would have covered some hills, but never any mountains, because the water table only rose 400 feet when that happened. So that's the most likely candidate.
Right.
So they could have, for their mindset at that time, that was the whole world flooding, because their land area that they know about, which is why it uses the word Eretz, is only talking about their general land area.
Okay. And I'm assuming that like Noah had daughters, so like the repopulation would have been him like in incestuous relationships with.
Well, not
like
necessarily. So he didn't have daughters. He had 3 sons, according to the story.
Okay.
The 3 sons had wives. Now, their children would have all, of course, been cousins. And so they would have been doing some cousin fucking in order to repopulate the planet. Which we know what happens when you do a whole bunch of cousin fucking.
Yeah, it's still DNA mixing, yeah.
Mm-hmm. You need at least 16,000 people to repopulate the Earth in order to have enough genetic diversity.
Right.
So 8 people ain't gonna do it. Well, and this is not even 8 people. You got 6 people who are participating in this. So 6 people can't repopulate the Earth. You need 16,000. Otherwise, you're gonna get, and I know this is not a word that people use today, but I don't give a shit. Otherwise, you're gonna have retardation. Right?
Yeah.
And not only that, you're gonna have other types of deficiencies or disabilities that begin to become commonplace. So it just can't happen. It just can't happen.
But there's no way in the book that explained how that happened afterwards, like how, like maybe some other people survived. I don't know.
No, not according to this book. According to this book, they were the only one who survived, and then all of a sudden, the sons, their children, become the progenitors of other nations. So it's like Ham's kids become the Canaanites, and they become the Egyptians and Ethiopians. Like Japheth's kids become the northern Turkish and the Europeans, and so they all start to become different people. And that's the claim that they make. But really, they only claim, even though I said Japheth's family becomes the Europeans, that they don't really claim total European. Is people look at Japheth and his people become the sea people, and they become, and so people then extrapolate that they become the Greeks, and then the Europeans. People start to add to it, and since Ham's kids become the Egyptians and the Ethiopians, they just assume that they became all the African people,
right?
But they just are naming, really all they're naming are people in their general area, and know that they become those people because that's all they knew. They didn't know about people in the Americas,
right?
So people make up these lineages after that in order to justify people existing in other places that are not mentioned in the Bible. But that's as far as it goes. It doesn't go any further than that. I'll just say who.
Yeah, there's a part of me that wishes that they'd done like a more logical story because I don't know, it's when you start thinking about it logically, that's where some of these stories break apart.
So what we have to, if what you have to do is look at the story from the point of view of the people at that time frame. So this story most likely being written around 500 BCE, being re-edited around 500 BCE. They are writing it based on the level of scientific knowledge they had at that time frame, social knowledge that they had at that time frame, and geological knowledge they had at that time frame. So this is them taking this Babylonian story and making it part of their Judaic story.
Right.
And to them, it was logical because to them, the world was only the areas that they understood.
That they live in. Oh, okay. Okay, I understand. Yeah. So, okay, right. So let's say, for example, like if I never came out my house since birth, if my house flooded, I'm thinking that the entire world is flooded.
Right. If your house floods and you look out the window and everything you see out the window looks flooded, to you, the whole world is flooded.
The whole world is flooded. Oh, okay, I understand.
That's actually a very good example that I'm gonna steal.
No, but then there's a possibility that it can make sense, I guess.
Right. It will make that's the possibility of it making sense to those people back then. But as we travel further up to our time frame, readers of it should have, and many did, but readers should have been like, this doesn't make any sense now.
Right.
Because we know more, so we know that these stories are an impossibility. To them, they could go to the highest mountain in Turkey, and animals could go to the highest mountain in Turkey and survive. They had no idea that Mount Everest existed, or Mount Whitney existed, or the Italian Alps existed.
Right.
So for them, mountains high enough that you can barely breathe or not breathe, or you can't even build a fire, or animals can't live up there. That was like, what are you talking about? That doesn't exist.
So is there any value like in this story from our point of view?
Actually, no. The story has no value whatsoever. The story is actually kind of demented because and here's the main statement that makes this story a demented story. before the flood, this guy says that the reason he's going to destroy all of man is because mankind is evil with every thought from youth. He kills everybody. And then at the end of the story, he says that I'm not going to do that ever again because mankind is evil in every thought from youth. So it's kind of like this purposeless story of this guy regretting making man, kills man because every thought is evil, and then says, well, I'm just not going to kill him again because every thought from man is evil. So man just fucked up. So what's the point of this story? Because the righteous person the person you call righteous, all his children are going to produce kids who are going to repopulate the earth, and they're all going to be evil anyway. So even saying righteous man didn't matter.
Because I'm even trying to think of it from the viewpoint as if like maybe not like a fairy tale, but maybe like telling it as a parable if there's any value to it.
Yeah, no, there's none.
Or some sort of
preachers will try to make it where this shows God's love and his justice. Like God is just in killing everybody. But there is no points of justice within the story when he regrets making man and then still regrets making man at the end.
Yeah, because the reason why I say that is because you know how in Egyptian mythology there's Horus was birthed from his father was dead.
Yeah.
And then he not like an immaculate sort of birth so there is some sort of value to telling that story in other cultures of the virgin birth in other cultures. So I was wondering maybe this story had some sort of, since it was told in no. No.
And even though Horus Isis wasn't a virgin. The birth is just a miraculous birth because she put his Osiris body back together with the help of Thoth. Except for his penis, they couldn't find that.
Yeah.
So he's regenerated to life, resurrected. She hovers above his penis, and she gets pregnant by hovering. Miracle birth, and then he becomes the redemption child that reestablishes the true kingdom. So you can try to, like, from a governmental position or a salvation position, you can see the parable in that through all this treachery, a child will be born that will fight the man who killed his daddy and save the community. You can get some of that out of that story.
Yeah.
And that it had to come through a special birth, that only special people can do that. So really it's saying that you average jokers can't do shit. Right. So it's just like your namesake on here. You know, Christoph came in as the unicorn. He's still the damn unicorn, but he came in as a unicorn, and that was something special that helped change the NBA. Right. For Christoph, you had very few big men who were out there jacking threes and efficiently. So he and Dirk kind of changed the NBA in that regard. You know, I'm gonna throw AK-47 in there as well. They kind of changed the NBA. So these stories, like Horus, is a change of society. The Noah story doesn't provide a change in society, just a regrettable situation and a mass murdering by this guy. The Tower of Babel has a better parable, better parabolic sense to it than the flood story. At least from that story, you can kind of create a methodology of how all the different languages came about, even though that story is deeply flawed as well. But you can come out of that with that. There's nothing to come out of this story with other than this mass genocidal maniac.
Yeah, true. Sure. I would have believed in the story if like Noah brought on maybe like 14 or 15 of his side chicks on the boat with him to save some of them. I would have believed it though.
Well, well, that's the interesting part. So in the Sumerian, in the earlier versions of the story,
Hmm.
Sudra brought on certain craftsmen. Atrahasis brought on every craftsman known, known of that time frame.
Hmm.
Them brought on a bunch of craftsmen as well. So at least in those three earlier versions, they brought other people of different genetics so that you can repopulate the earth
Yeah.
with at least a little bit of genetic diversity.
Hmm.
But it's still not enough. But at least you get some genetic diversity in this.
Yeah.
And with that
Yeah.
genetic diversity, you can then say, okay, some of these people are going to go off in different tribes and believe in different things and whatnot. The Noah version, you don't get that.
Yeah. True. True. I, I don't want to hold somebody else from coming on, but this was fun. This was
Yeah,
fun talking to you.
I appreciate it. Come on anytime that you like. I ain't gonna lie.
Thank you so much.
I wish you was the real Christoph. But then I'd be like, bro, we gotta have a side conversation.
No, but honestly, like, so Chris, short story before I go. Kristaps, like, he became my favorite player because I used to be like Knicks fan because I liked Carmelo Anthony, and then the Knicks fan booed him on his draft day, because they wanted another player, so he got booed on his draft day, and it's just like his mental strength to like go to summer league, like play well, and then come on as a rookie and like give the performances he did like as a rookie. It was amazing. So he became like my favorite player from then on. So as long as his knees hold up, I think like the Hawks can be good this year. Your only competition is the Cavs. Like the East is finished. So
I agree.
yeah.
And he got to control his pots too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just read about him having pots, so he got to control that and make sure he keeps his body healthy so that his energy reserves don't like drain like they did last year.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
No, but this was awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. And I will be watching the game tonight. We play Orlando. I think Orlando is a possible threat as well in the East. Let me get Jeremiah. That's going to be my last person if Jeremiah's still there, because I got to be somewhere at 3:00.
Listen, you guys just cracked me up, man. Listen, I live in New York. My brother right there said the only competition.
New York ain't. Look, you know what Atlanta do to y'all in the playoffs, all right?
Listen, you need Trae Young to be ice cold around that time. You know what I mean?
But when he play y'all, he is.
That is true. But
he thrives.
Last year you didn't do that great, but this year we real tight though. You see that too, right?
I see y'all.
You see us?
I see y'all. But see, every sport is about matchups. Y'all match up well against the Cavs. If it's y'all and the Cavs in the Eastern Conference Finals, I'm gonna say New York wins that series. But if y'all are playing us or Orlando, y'all losing that series.
Well, I want to see you guys together first. I want to see you guys how y'all look. I mean, things look good. As my boy was talking about earlier there, but Porzingis, I want to see what he can do because his knees is a factor right about now. So, I think y'all gonna be good, but the Knicks 5 is well rounded right now, as you can see. I mean, best team in the East right now, arguably. I mean, you can say that too, right? Kind of. I mean, you can say that.
Y'all are.
It's okay.
I can say that right now because I'm giving my team to the All-Star break before we see who they really are.
Exactly.
You know, because Luke Kennard played like shit, and he's a specialist at the 3-point. Trey didn't play all that great, and you can tell they was disjointed. They just got to get used to each other. And then we're going to hand y'all ass. We're going to roll them dice on y'all court. Remember that last year?
Can't wait to see that, y'all. Can't wait to see that one. Can't wait to see that one. Listen, I've been following you for like about a good, I would say maybe 4 months or so.
Okay, cool.
Listen, to be honest with you, man, I've been a Christian for over 40 years. And when I say a Christian, I'm talking about involved in Christianity to the highest level.
Right.
Pastoral ministry, train pastors to, do stuff, become bishop, do all of that, work out of Bible institutes, all of that stuff, you know what I mean?
Right.
But one of the things that I really start seeing, because Christianity, those that are Christians within the fold are not open to any other teachings out there besides the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that is one of the major flaws in Christianity. Now, I'm saying it because I still go to church. I mean, I still preach, I still teach. But I'm on a different wave line right now because I encourage my people to literally, sort of knowledge, man, because people really perish because of knowledge. And I'm on this journey right now, listening to you guys and listening to so many others. And simple questions like you were having today, with the boat, with all the football field and the width of a football field and how much poop that 6 people or so on that boat got to clean. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
These things literally, man, don't make no sense, right?
Nope.
But you can tell the average Christian that. Because no matter what you say, they won't see it, right? I heard you mention also on hell, because I started having more conversation. And when I talk to people about now, and I'm literally having folks, I tell some folks sometimes, I can't be a camera because sometimes, I'm on Facebook, we do Facebook Live, we do, different things. I tell folks, I say, listen, Jay, certain things I'm going to say to you right now, but I can't be on camera to say it. Things like that, I said, I got to wait because, it takes some time for me to really get it together. But one of the things that we got to face it in Christianity that Jesus is not coming back. Meaning, that concept of Jesus itself as the savior of the world, right? That many people today is looking for the return. That's not happening, brother. And in saying these things, and these things are the pillars of Christianity.
Yeah.
Heaven and hell. All of these things are the pillars of Christianity. And now that I have the opportunity to look into these things more, mind you, I preached for over 20 years, brother. I'm asking myself at times, dude, what have you been saying? Because one of the things I really come to understand, when you're blind, you're really blind.
Right.
All right. When you are over a spell, as many will say too, I'm not saying that I was, but I can see is like if I literally was, or many others literally are. Because it don't matter what you show people or you open up their mind and pull out certain things, they're just not seeing it, man, and can't understand it. Because the whole atmosphere or the wholeness of Christianity and serving God is built on belief and faith that you cannot prove. A matter of fact, it's the wording alone simply tell you don't even have to prove it. You just got to believe it. And when I start searching stuff and coming to understanding of these things, of knowledge and understanding the meaning of belief and faith, and to know, I'm saying, why would I just want to believe something, right? Or why would I teach anyone just to believe something? And if I'm a good student of life in general, dude, I'm not teaching anybody to believe something. Because to believe, you are still ignorant.
Yeah.
Right? You want to know. And
this is the journey. I'm glad when I met you the first time online and stuff, and many others. Knowing is more important. So now you and the brother were talking earlier about the whole Noah story, and that is a factor. And many people would not even see that. I mean, man, it's like literally the fumes is just gonna kill you. You're not gonna survive.
No, it's too much methane.
Ooh,
yeah,
man.
you would die of all the methane that will be on that boat, and you would freeze. You're gonna freeze at the top of the mountains. You're freezing to death. Like that's like you can go to Mount Everest right now, and there are bodies of people who could not make it all the way to the top, and they died when they got to that certain zone towards the peak.
Right.
And they never remove the bodies and you have to have oxygen tanks because you cannot breathe at that elevation. So there's no way that these animals and these people were able to breathe and stay warm at that elevation. And it would have all been covered by ice. Like there would have been a huge layer of ice at the top at that elevation.
Correct.
So the boat would have been stuck.
I tell you, man, I really appreciate you guys, man. I know you wanted to leave a little earlier, and then I ended up coming back a little late, but I apologize about that. But
yeah, because I really, really want to talk to you. I got so many questions.
Dude, listen, you go ahead, but I mean, right?
I don't have the time to do all of them because my wife is way more important than all of y'all. But
for sure.
But I really are you available Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday? Because I go live Monday through Friday.
Monday through Friday, yeah. As long as I get you, because sometimes I'll be strolling through looking for you, and I don't be seeing you. And sometimes when I see you popped up, it's like you're about finishing,
Okay.
Because but no, for sure.
Because I don't care what we're talking about, because I really want to delve into. You're still in the church. You're still preaching. You're telling I really want to know how your congregation. Are you the senior pastor, or are you where are you in?
I'm the senior pastor, the overseer of the church. Yes.
So how has your congregation been responding to you telling them, to you teaching them these different things, and especially saying that Jesus is not? So do you teach that Jesus ain't coming back at all, or is the coming back at the end time?
No. I'm on the belief system of studying and seeing what the scripture is all about now, knowing that Jesus is not coming back. When I mentioned that to you earlier, is I was getting ready to do a live TikTok, because we post on TikTok at times, and we were just having a conversation with the family, and one of my relatives from Trinidad is here, one of the best worship leader out of Trinidad and stuff, and I was to be real with her because I sang, you guys, all these songs we sing, and I'm into it too. Don't get me wrong, because these stuff are embedded in you. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
All of the worship songs and all of that, and I'm saying y'all singing worship songs of Yahweh. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm being real, and I'm saying, guys, when you really look at these things, I said we are so off. And then start talking about Jesus, and I said, listen, I got to be real with y'all, man. I say we love Jesus and all of that, great teacher and stuff like that from scripture point of view. But I say if we're looking for the Savior to come back, I wasn't talking to the congregation about that. That's what I'm saying right now.
Oh, okay.
I was talking to them about it.
Oh, gotcha.
Right. But I said Jesus is not coming back. Now the congregation now, on the other hand, I started with the congregation, but not talking about Jesus as in how we look at it, but I'm encouraging folks to look at the teachings of Jesus, because Jesus was always referring to his Father, what his Father tells him to do. And I'm saying that from a scripture or Bible point of view.
Yeah,
right? Now, on the existence of if Jesus is a real individual, and if he is the savior of the world, and believing in Mary, the Immaculate Conception, all of those things, that's another debate. I mean, you know, I'm fully up there too. But my point is that I'm encouraging people because there's good teachings in the Word. There is some good teachings that you can get from the teachings of Christ, and I try to like the one that I did yesterday on TikTok. It was John 8:31. No, John 8:32. When Jesus was speaking to the congregation of the Jews who believe on him, he said, "If you continue in my words." Now, he didn't say if you look at him as the Messiah, the God, the teacher, and all of that. He said, if you continue in my words, he said, you will be my disciple, and you will know the truth. You see what I'm saying?
I think
and that is the same thing we start off talking about, because you can learn from the teachings of Christ in that manner. He said, you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free. So Christians is not after the truth. Christians is after what Christianity is.
Yeah, I see. Right? So I see where you're going. I actually, and this is not. I'm not trying to sound braggadocious or anything like that. But for some of the pastors that I've worked with over the years, who were doing what you're doing, in a simple way of putting it, they had to understand, when teaching your congregation, separate the teachings of Jesus from the teachings of Paul, and recognize that it's the Pauline teachings that creates the whole Messiah coming back and all that sort of thing. And the later gospel took from Paul's ideas and taught that, like John and stuff took from Paul's ideas when he puts Jesus as God, first John. So yeah, I see. If I'm correct, it seems like that's what your line is, like teachings of Jesus based on what the teachings of Jesus say, not the misinterpretation of Paul of what they're saying Jesus has said.
Correct.
Okay, but I gotta let you go, even though I hate it right now, because it's almost 2:00 my time, and I gotta get my wife at 3. So.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're gonna definitely, I mean, I wanted to come to where you are in San Antonio, man. You had your conference. I wanted to come, but or work with MTA Bridge and Tunnels over the side, so it was kind of difficult. But I'll see you next time, because I want to be a part of what you're doing.
Look forward to it. Appreciate it. All right.
Blessings, man.
Thank you. And you're in New York, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I know next year, August, I'm coming through New York for about 3 days. So if I don't catch you any other time, I'm gonna definitely catch you then.
For sure.
All right.
For sure.
Appreciate you, Jeremiah. All right.
You got it. Blessings. All right.
Bye. Oh yeah, I can have a whole 2-3 hour conversation on here with Jeremiah, because I find that extremely interesting. When people are going through that and how they're going to facilitate that situation. But anyway, no long exit today. I appreciate everybody. Thank you for being here. I know Fridays we normally go up until about 2:30 my time, which will be another 40 minutes, which I was supposed to stop 20 minutes ago. So I'm running behind already. Not to pick up my wife, but things I got to do before I go pick her up. So I appreciate everybody. I look forward to seeing you guys. I will shoot some video, and maybe even allow it to go live for a little bit while I'm down at the Day of the Dead parade here in San Antonio, because she wants to go there and I want to go there too. So we can see this mixture of Christianity and Aztec Mayan culture forced together through the colonization that happened in Mexico, due to the Spanish conquering that territory, and how when they forced Christianity into the Mexicans, what we call Mexicans today, but the Mexicans was able to keep the Day of the Dead, which is just ancestral veneration, which the Catholic Church already had a system of ancestral veneration And that's what the whole Day of the Dead is all about, which is which truthfully is another variation of Christianity, or Christianity adopting what they would call pagan worship into their religion. So yeah, we got a look. We saw it last year, but we had just got here the week of this event, this time frame. So now we're more prepared to go in and participate in. So y'all have a great day. Always remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Continue to share all the videos and everything. Go to the merch shop, pick up some shirts, not this one, but pick up some shirts. I appreciate everybody. Good journey, good vibrations. And share all my videos that I posted. Like and comment.